Hi, hello, and welcome to I'm Still Currently Dying, but hey, welcome to part 2 of Come Cringe With Me. Yeah, like I just stated, this is a part 2. However, part 1 isn't really necessary to view to understand most of this because this weird murder boy story was absolutely divorced from everything else that I had written. So sorry if I sound tired. I happened to find a fanfiction last night with two of my favorite ships at the current time in a fantasy AU inspired by the Grimm's fairy tales, and, well, let's just say those 23 chapters weren't gonna read themselves. And if I stayed up till like 3:30 in the morning, that's between me and the void. Let's talk about this murder boy real quick. So in the last video, I called him Kyle. And I bring that up not to convince you to watch the previous video, but because I made a mistake, a little bit of an oopsie. His name was not Kyle. I mixed him up with a romantic interest of another character from another story. No. This boy's name was actually Matthew. I probably won't refer to him by name through most of this, but if I accidentally swap between the two, now you know. So yeah, this boy's story has always been a bit of a hot mess. In the first version, he basically just washed up ashore of this river on the side of the murder academy that are like the big bad evil guys of this entire story, and they took him in and they healed him, but he had amnesia, so he didn't remember anything, and he was missing like some limbs or whatever, and they were just like, half off on this boy. So they basically, in a week of them recovering, helping him recover or whatever, they basically convinced him to do whatever and just murder whoever they wanted. Yeah, they just wanted him to straight up murder everyone, I guess. But I very quickly realized that there was a very dull story, that not giving him a backstory because I didn't want to write it was kind of lame, in a way, because I had worked under the assumption that if I wrote a backstory, if I wrote something, or if a character had something, I would have to tell all of it in excruciating detail. That's not true. You don't need to write out the entirety of a character's story. You just need to know it in your mind so you know their motivations. I didn't have one. I didn't know his motivations. He was just bland romantic interest boy. Because I just was like, yeah, dystopian future stories have romantic interests, right? And I was just kind of like painting by numbers at the time. Then at some point I decide, this story is too normal. I gotta spice it up, make things weird again. So I decided somehow that when Kiely's parents got killed, and she was escaping or whatever, that the academy went over to their laboratory and they found this pod that was like, ooh, what's this? Ooh, and like they don't know it's like a cloning machine or whatever, and there's just the boy. It's him. It's our boy. It's our dear old Kyle / Matthew. And they were like, ooh, we're gonna take him in. He may be missing some limbs and we don't understand why, and we definitely don't know the fact that he is an alien, which does get clunkily revealed in one version of this story. But hey, let's just take in this murder boy, and over the course of a year, 2, 3, or whatever, let's just completely destroy him mentally. And they do that. But then someone kind of pointed out to me, oh, if he's an alien, why does he just look like a human? My excuse was like, oh, it's a very similar species. You can't, like, see the differences. Like, the differences are internal. And they're like, that's a cop-out, my dude. That's boring. Like, what? Like, you have, like, all these options open to you, and you stick with a dull human design for this poor boy? This, like, look at him, he's just thin and gangly and boring. And I was like, dang it, you're right. So, but I still didn't want to design a whole alien species, because I wasn't planning on showing any other alien other than this boy. So I was like, well, how do I get around? Oh, he's half alien. What? That doesn't explain anything. That just confuses current me more, if anything. Like, for one, if he's half alien, why, pray tell, does he still look so oh, okay, the human DNA is stronger? Okay, I won't get an explanation. Thanks, young man. So yeah, I decided half alien was the route to go. So the scene sort of changes a little bit. Yeah, the academy still go to the laboratory, but instead of finding a fully formed alien boy, they see like a rotten animal carcass on the ground of this weird pod thing, and they're like, ew, but can we do it with humans this time? Maybe? And so they find this vial of like alien DNA somewhere. I don't know where. Just one of them was like, ooh, alien. And they were like, oh, these scientists, they got to the asteroid we wanted to get to the other day when we wanted to make our alien army. More on that at 5. And so they were like, oh yeah, let's just like shove this alien DNA in this pod and make an alien boy. But then they were like, uh-oh, the DNA isn't fully sequenced. We don't have enough to make a fully realized flesh boy. So they were like, yo, we need some sort of other DNA that's similar to help like staple in the rest of it or whatever. And they were like, oh, human? Human. And so the headmaster character goes and plucks a hair from Kiely's father's head and puts it in the thing, and he's the source about the DNA and technically Kyle's father now. Yeah, if you didn't catch why that's creepy because mayhaps your brain was fried from how stupid that was, or you decided you didn't want to watch the other part, like the part 1 video, which honestly I can't blame you. This is creepy because Kyle and Kiely, or Matthew and Kiely, yikes, were supposed to be romantic interests. Yeah, which is really creepy and gross, but if you also remember, or maybe you've already guessed, I had a thing for plot twists, just really pointless plot twists that did nothing for anything, and were just there because I thought that's how you wrote a good story. Those weren't actually Kylie's parents. They adopted her. So, yeah, less on that the better. So yeah, at that point, I'm like proud of this version of the story. I'm like, oh yeah, now it's like explained why he doesn't have a backstory. I don't have to give him a personality, because if he acts weird, I could just blame it on like his human and alien DNA or like fighting, and it's like the alien species didn't have emotions or something. I don't know. It was like very weak excuses of half-brained ideas I didn't know how to write, but I had seen elsewhere. So then I am trying to tell someone the story, but then I realize, as I'm explaining, how creepy the whole Kiely Matthews subplot thing sounds. How creepy the half-alien slash, it might be her father fake-out thing might sound. So on the spot, I change it so that instead of plucking a hair from Kylie's father's head, the headmaster character does it. Which, by the way, I talked to my brother who is very much into science, and I was like, I'm pretty sure this isn't how DNA sequencing works. I'm pretty sure this isn't how science stuff works. But you do research this a bit more just in your free time for funsies. Is this even close to right? And he just kind of looked at me with this really dead, like, his eyes. Oh, I can't explain the disappointment in them. But it's one I've only been able to get from my parents. So yeah, this boy goes to the murder academy school or whatever, but he's always locked up on his own, and he's always like safe or whatever. He's like constantly in this room where they're constantly attaching like pumps and valves and like whatever to him, because like, oh, he's dying, it's like IV, but like futuristic or whatever. I don't know. But I had this like very vague foggy idea that the DNA of alien and human stuff would be fighting, which is a very interesting concept for like someone to be born and like 2 parts of them are like fighting, like physically, not just mentally or emotionally or whatever. But I couldn't write it well because there was like quite a few scenes where this boy showed up well and fine. He just was a little scrawny, because that's how I knew how to write weak people. Just, you know, make him thin, but he's still like physically strong, you know? He has this whole sequence where he nearly fights Kiely in the gym ballroom thing, and then he's gone, and he doesn't really show up much more in the text. Kiely, while she's escaping, overhears some nuns talking about him. The only reason there are nuns in the story is because I had watched that episode of Doctor Who with the cat nuns, and I was like, ooh, spicy. I like that idea. Let me take that for me. Yeah, she overhears some nuns, but she doesn't understand what they're saying because I'd written in the text, boy written in wingdings, which I was under the assumption when I was younger was a language, and so in the context of the universe, it was also a language. Whatever. So, present me now, future me, whatever. I can't believe I forgot this bit of the story because it's super important and the only moment of reincorporation I ever put into this story. So, in all the different versions of like this first draft of the story, Matthew has to go and find Kiely because she has super important technology that the academy, the assassin school or whatever, wants. And in the first couple drafts, it was nothing. But maybe if you've seen the part 1, you might know where this is going. She had a time machine at some point in the story, and they were like, I want that. So they basically try to get the time machine, and the reason they want it has to do, it ties in with Matthew being an alien. So yeah, there's like this meteor crash or whatever, and they really wanted to get the aliens so that they could nurse them back to health and force them to kill everyone so that they could be in control, which is a dumb plan, you know. So they just wanted the time machine, and it was the only thing of like reincorporation I ever added, and it did absolutely nothing to the story. Back to previous me. So eventually though, I kind of just abandoned this story, so there's really nothing I do with it, and his characterization doesn't really do much. Then I kind of get to like this weird 1.5 version of the story that I didn't mention in the last video because it wasn't important and I hadn't remembered it. But it was like this short version where Kiely kills him very early on in the story and then reads his diary and goes, ooh, I feel bad. But that was about it, you know? It didn't really affect her emotionally or anything. She just went, that sucks, wish I didn't do that. Again, that version didn't stay very long. It was like the weirdest version, if I'm honest. Then I get to the third version, which is Kiely's true second form of her story or whatever. And God, he was just boring and bland. I got rid of all of his backstory. He was no longer alien, he was just a normal human boy. I don't think I got rid of his missing limbs. In fact, I think I got rid of another one of his limbs, so he had another mechanical like bit to compensate for it. And at some point I just kind of fell out of love with that version of the story because it was very boring, it was tedious to write, and it was very pretentious. Like, it was clear I was trying harder than I needed to, and that was kind of the goal from the beginning of it. And like, I just wasn't happy writing it. It made me like very uncomfortable because it was like, I didn't have my heart in it, you know? But yeah, that was a very short-lived version of the story. I think I went more in depth in like the last video about like Kiely's version of the story, but again, like, hers was so surgically removed from his that it didn't really matter much. And then I get to this final version, the one that I'm finally getting happy with. So this boy, this poor boy, is nameless because I don't like either name, Kyle or Matthew, for him in particular. It just doesn't work. I don't think it fits in the setting. I don't think it fits for like the characters that I imagine his parents would be. I don't think it just fits him or suits him. I don't think any of that works. So yeah, the scene opens up for him. Like, his story basically occurs like 3/4-ish. It's a rough time frame because I haven't like pinned down a lot of details before the actual events of most of the main story. And he gets in like a car wreck and he watches his parents die before his very eyes, and he ends up losing part of his lower leg. And it's totally Kiely's fault that his parents are dead and that happened to him. She sort of caused the accident. Like, it's 100% her fault. When he's passing out before the medics show up, he's just thinking about how much he wants to exact revenge on this girl, not knowing that she just has, or / just will, depending on the timeline thing, will quite literally go through quite a similar pain in losing her parents. But nonetheless, he doesn't like her, he hates her, and he wants her dead. And so when he wakes up in this makeshift hospital that's being run by like some field medics who are trying their best, because like this is a bit of a dystopian future thing still, but it's not going to be like a rise against the government thing. It's just going to be like, the government's the best we've got at the moment, and other things suck, and people are just trying to live. Because I'm kind of sick of like the let's rebel against the government storyline. Not that it can't be interesting, I just don't want to write it. And the medics are like, listen, we're sorry, we tried our best, your parents didn't make it, you lost like part of your leg, we tried our best, we're sorry. And but he already knows, you know, he like felt the leg come off, and he saw his parents die before his eyes, like he knows. And like that's something that throughout the story he's gonna have to deal with. It's something that's going to traumatize him, and it's something that will affect a lot of his actions through it, and how he will react to Kiely when she shows back up in his life. So then this this corporation, which is like the 2.0 of the academy from before, has like a scout at the hospital, and they're basically looking around for anyone that they can prey upon to basically trick into working for them by basically indebting them to them so much it's ridiculous. And they see this boy, and they're like, wow, he's mostly able-bodied, he's got revenge in his eyes, and like he just lost his parents, like hello, gold mine, yeah, we can manipulate him. So they do. And then it's like 3 years of him having like awful terrible stuff happen to him, and them just exerting power over him. His hair naturally is like a thick, like waved dark color or whatever. I haven't like fully settled on like the actual texture. I'm still like working out like some of the character design stuff. And he always styled it a certain way because it reminded him of his mother. Academy doesn't like that, or the corporation doesn't like that. They just chop it off and they dye it to a harsh platinum blonde, like using like the really bad bleach, like the drugstore bleach that'll fry your hair within 5 seconds kind of stuff. And they get it to such a bad state that it is dry and brittle and near ramen noodle texture. It's bad. And so, but they'd already given him like this prosthetic for his leg, so he's like super indebted to him. Not just like monetarily, which he totally is monetarily indebted to them, like in like a legal sense of the way, but also like emotionally he feels like he owes them. So they definitely use that against him. At some point he talks out of turn against them or something, or just says something they don't like, and so they fashion a mask around his face that claws into his cheeks, and it puts like a semi-poisonous gas into his system that gives him chronic pain issues. But like they sort of increment it in a way like, well, we warned you. Like it's a very awful and manipulative what they're doing to him. And then like he uses like an unauthorized sign language at one point, and they chop off 2 fingers from each hand in like different places to be like, we warned you, but they didn't. They just suck. Yeah, and like an interesting thing to bring up about the prosthetics in this universe is they are sort of similar to the ones in the Full Metal Alchemist universe in that they are very hard to get acclimated to. Like it's a very painful process, it's very grueling, but that's about where the only comparisons are, aside from the fact that it's like a mechanical limb thing. These are more of like a fantasy based and a sci-fi based, like a science based, like in Full Metal Alchemist. These are sort of magical. I mean, there's not really exact magic, it's just I'm kind of going a bit off of what science would actually have, just a bit, because I feel like it'll work better for the story. And they have like sort of energy joints, and they can move very fast. However, a drawback is they can get very easily overheated if you overwork them, or if you have too many bonus features on them that basically run the system too hot. There are like blocks or whatever that block it from burning like the scar tissue of the stump or whatever, but it can overheat to the point where it can still burn through that block seal thing. And this is especially true of like the older models. They're almost always at a risk of combustion. Like if you overwork them, or if you don't cool them properly or care for them properly, they could very easily explode at a moment's notice. His prosthetic limb has so many bonus features. Like, I drew it recently in a concept thing, and oh, it's such a cluttered design. I'm coming to realize this will never be like told in like a visual like way where it's like I get it animated or put into a comic or anything, because oof, like drawing like the mechanical limbs is just so tedious and like over detailed. It wouldn't work for something like that. But yes, his thing has so many bits and bobs. It opens up, it has compartments, it has blades that pop out, the rocket power, this, that, or the other. So it's like, it's very dangerous, and it's almost always overheated to the point where it's like, it's very hot, even through the block to like his stump. So he's always in pain. But he's kind of like, not come to terms to it, but like he's like very morose and upset about the situation, because he believes that this is honestly the best for him, that he can't escape. And like, that's kind of the sad thing about human nature. Like, when people end up in bad situations, it's really hard for them to escape because of stuff like that. This poor boy. It does get better for him though, eventually. I have some things planned out. A potential boyfriend for him to meet. It won't fix him mentally to have a boyfriend immediately, but him having someone he can lean on and eventually heal with definitely helps. I'm currently calling the potential boyfriend character just Cyborg Boy, because he's never had an official like name in any version. He used to be Android Girl, which is very interesting, and like one of the original versions of the story. But like, he is the adoptive older brother character to Kiely, so they have like a lot of tension, and a lot of the story will focus on basically how they, all three of them, come over like their respective traumas and how they overcome it, and what they do like to each other, not like in a weird, like how they act around each other, how they eventually grow to like forgive or whatever in like this bad situation. Again, there's not going to be any fighting government parts. They might at the most fight like a small branch of the corporation to get away from where they live, but that would just be so they could live in peace. I do have this segment sort of planned out where this poor murder boy, Matthew, Kyle, whatever you want to call him, he's going to have to rip out both of his prosthetics on his hands and on his leg and like rip the mask off, and that's gonna be like his whole scene where it's like he realizes all the wrongs he's done, what he's been tricked into doing, and kind of the corporation is tracking him through said items, and he just like it's kind of like a weird change evolving moment, kind of like how the car wreck initially was like a change moment. I don't know how to explain it. I just like, there are scenes like in comics and books and movies that are like, they always represent something for a character, and symbolically that means something. What it is, I can't quite articulate, but like, it's a very important moment for him because it signifies his growth, even if it's like growth that he doesn't want to acknowledge. But that's about all I have for this poor boy. That's about all I have written for his story, and I think this video is probably drawn on long enough. So sorry if I rambled too much. I might have left out a couple details by accident, so sorry for that. I hope you found this entertaining. I hope I sounded better than previously. I hope you have a nice day. Bye-bye!